So now the next ayah, it opens the door to this. الَّذِينَ يُكَذِّبُونَ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ. Those who lied against the day of judgment. In the previous surah we found without the word yawm. كَلَّا بَلْ تُكَذِّبُونَ بِالدِّينِ. You're lying against the deen itself. You don't like the idea of judgment. You don't like the idea of someone, holding you accountable for the things you've done. But in reality, you've been reminded of this enormous day over and over and over again. How many times have we heard the reminder in these few weeks about the akhirah? What's the core problem? Why, what Allah repeats the most is what is denied the most. When Allah repeats taqwa more than anything else in the Quran, it's because what people lose the most is what? It's taqwa. When Allah repeats the reminder of the hereafter in one way, then another way, then another way, the oceans will boil over, then the oceans will go wild, then the mountains will be like carded wool, then the mountains are going to sail. He says the same thing over and over and over again. Why? Because this is the thing people tend to overlook and not concern themselves. No, this is, I don't want to hear about the akhirah, I already believe in the akhirah, thanks. Can we go to another chapter? Can we talk about something else? It is this that hasn't been imprinted into your mind, into your heart. That is the reason of this tatfif al-mizan. This is the reason. So, Allah says, الَّذِينَ يُكَذِّبُونَ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ. Those who lie against the day of, literally of judgment, of the due portion being given. Then he gives a further explanation. وَمَا يُكَذِّبُ بِهِ. And there's no one at all in existence who would lie against that, except a certain kind of person. إِلَّا كُلُّ مُعْتَدٍ أَثِيمٍ. So this is where we have to pay attention. What kind of a person is not able to internalize the awesome reality of the Day of Judgment? What kind of person is it? Two adjectives have been given. مُعْتَدٍ أَثِيمٍ. We have to understand both of these terms. إِعْتَدَى in the Arabic language. It means to violate somebody else's rights or to cross the limits. So you wrong somebody, then you have become a mu'tad. You've become a mu'tad. When you wrong somebody, like we said, the first time maybe you feel bad. The second time it's a little easier for you. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth, it's second nature. Then not only is it easy for you, you're proud of it on top of that. And you find worse ways of becoming a mu'tad, of wronging the people. This is how, tyrants are created on this earth, whether they rule countries or they're in charge of a household, or they run a business, or they have employees, or they're a sibling, or they're a bully. In any way, shape, or form, this is a mu'tad, the one who crosses the limits. Then we find the word athim, which comes from ithm. Ithm in its original form means, it's commonly translated as sin, but the Quran has about a dozen words used for sin. So it's very particular what ithm means. Ithm is a kind of, attitude and a behavior that keeps you from doing good things. So on the one hand, the mu'tad is a guy that's doing bad things. And athim makes him a guy that keeps him from doing good things. There's a kind of person that does bad things and also does good things. Right? They're messed up in this, but at least they do that much, right? Some other good. But he is mu'tad on one hand and athim on the other. He's the worst of the worst. These are the worst of the worst that can absolutely deny, without the blink of an eye, deny the existence of judgment. They will hear these words and they will laugh at them. Nothing will go on in you won't see a bulge on their forehead. Why not? Because they've attained these two attributes over time. They've become mu'tad on the one hand, athim on the other. The Ahlul Lugha, the people of language, they comment that ithm is primarily an issue of the heart. It's a psychological thing. That your heart doesn't feel inclined at all, actually becomes uncomfortable in doing anything good. Which is why we find in the Quran, فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ. That his heart has become athim. His heart has become one that deters doing good. It's become sinful in that sense. We find a beautiful hadith in this connection about ithm. الْبِرُّ مَطْمَأَنَّتْ إِلَيْهِ النَّفْسِ وَالْإِثْمُ مَا حَاكَ فِي صَدْرِكَ. I found this hadith in Anwar al-Bayan fi Halli Lughat al-Quran, which is a book on the grammatical analysis of the Quran. The Rasul says, righteousness or goodness is what will satisfy your nafs. It'll give you tranquility. Itma'annat bihin nafs. And the sin, ithm, this holding back from good, is what will eat away at you. Meaning, it'll eat away at you in the beginning until you reach the point where you're no longer athim, but you are athim. You see the ya in the word athim? That means this guy is stuck in that state. It's not like he did it once or twice. This has become a personality trait for this person. Every chance he gets, he violates somebody else's rights. Every chance he gets, every opportunity he gets to do good, he pushes it away. This is actually the worst case scenario of بِمَا قَدَّمَ وَأَخَّرَ. In the previous surah we read, عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ وَأَخَّرَتْ. Every person knows what they sent forward, what they left behind. The worst case scenario, everything he sends forward is an evil, is a violation of somebody's rights. And every good opportunity that comes to him to do something good with himself, he leaves it behind. He doesn't touch it. So this is actually the worst case scenario of the previous. Inshallah ta'ala, we go forward. Before we do, actually, a couple of things here. What we read in the previous surah has been mentioned in other places, this conscience of the human being, of him losing his natural predisposition towards doing good and not violating others' rights. In the beginning we find, بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. No, the human being is in full view of himself. He knows what he's up to. He knows what he's doing. وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. Even if he makes lots of excuses, he presents all of them like, I have this reason or that reason for doing whatever I'm doing. But now, so we've established that we're talking about these fujjar, these worst kinds of sinners. Look at their response to the ayat of Quran. When these ayat come, they're talking to him about what he's doing. They're very direct. I mean, these ayat for us, we could say these are a millennium and a half old. They were talking to the Arabs of that time. When you listen to their message, doesn't it rattle you? Man, this is happening at my office. This is what I'm doing at my business. I better tell my dad to stop. I better tell my uncle to not do this anymore. I've noticed when I was working for him that these things, tatfif al-mizan was going on. You start thinking, these ayat come to life about what's happening here. But the one who has gone past this point of return, إِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِ آيَاتُنَا قَالَ أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. When our ayat, when our miraculous signs are recited onto him, tutla, not tuliyat even, tutla, over and over again. Over and over again, the ayat are recited onto him. What does he respond with? أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. First of all, tala, understand something about the word tilawa, which is used here. It comes with two, it has masdarain, talwan wa tilawatan. Talwan means to follow someone, right behind them, like tailgating nowadays. Right? That would be tala yatlu. Also means to read. So it has two meanings, reading and following. So the ayat are read onto them, and literally the message follows them. Right? And whenever they hear it, asatirul awwaleen. They say, now what's their response? Let's understand something about the word asatir. It comes from three singulars. It has three singulars. Istar, asaytara, and astura. These are all acceptable singular forms of asatir. And it comes from the original word satr, which is lines. The connection here is, in the olden times, you had these legends of old times, like myth or mythology, right? Old stories. And somebody was really good at telling the story, and the kids really enjoyed it, right? So they would write it down. They would put it in lines. And this is how the legend would be passed on. Everybody knew this has nothing to do with the truth. This is just something that's passed on through generations. So when he heard Quran, he said, these are legends of old times. These are stories. What? Angels on my shoulders, and this nation was destroyed and that nation was destroyed, and I'm going to be raised back to life again. Come on. These are just stories. Grow up. So basically, their attitude is one of first of all, being condescending towards the ayat of Allah, and of literally talking to the one who's giving these ayat, making them seem like fools. Come on, what are you talking about? This is what we say nowadays. What you would say, 1400 years ago is asatirul awwaleen. What nonsense. What is this myth you keep bringing up? Asatirul awwaleen. So this is the first thing that makes him fajr. Really, the worst crime he's done so far is poke fun at the ayat of Allah. Somebody's a criminal, that's one thing. But they've reached that, a state of being criminal to the point where you try to correct them, and with the best possible correction, the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their response is, get lost. This is nonsense. Asatirul awwaleen. Kalla. Then Allah explains why did they reach this state. He keeps giving us reasons of why was tatfif. There was takdhib yawmiddin. There was lying against the day of resurrection. Now he pokes fun at the ayat, criticizes them, insults the ayat of Quran. Why does he do this? Kalla, not at all. He's not doing this for genuine reason. What is it that happens in response? بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. Rather, we place a rust on their hearts. رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. الطَّبَعْ وَالدَّنَسِ. The Lisan al-Arab Ibn Manzur says, it's an imprint, and it's filth that covers the heart. This is رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. We find Hasan radiallahu anhu saying, هُوَ الذَّمْ عَلَى الذَّمْ حَتَّى يَسْوَادَ الْقَلْبِ. It is sin after sin after sin until the heart becomes completely black. We find a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. We find this in Al-Bukhari, in which the Messenger says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, سُئِلَ عَنْ قَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى كَلَّا بَرَّانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. He was asked about this ayah. قال, he said, هُوَ الْعَبْدُ يَذْنِبْ الذَّنْبِ فَتُنْكَتُ فِي قَلْبِهِ نُكْتَةٌ سَوْدَاءٌ فَإِنْ تَابَ مِنْهَا صُقِلَ قَلْبُهُ وَإِنْ عَادَ نُكِتَتْ أُخْرَى حَتَّى يَسْوَدَّ الْقَلْبُ. This is a person who does a sin and their heart gets a spot on it, like a blemish on it, right? Which is what danas, the language scholars called it danas, a spot. And then if he repents and he goes back, then it's scrubbed off, it's washed off. Literally, it's made polished again, given a shine. The heart's given a shine, according to the wording of the hadith. But if he doesn't, if he continues, another spot and another spot and another spot until the entire heart becomes hard. Entire heart becomes black with filth and rust. And this is the state that is described in the ayah. رَانَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ. And what caused this filth on their heart? What is it that rusted over them? مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Whatever they used to earn is what made the rust occur on top of their hearts. Whatever these sins were. And have we learned in this surah already what they used to earn? Just a little tiny bit of profit. They weren't making millions necessarily. They were being cheap over a buck or two. They were being cheap over a minute or two, or a day or two of service. Something small, but they want to get more than they deserve. And they want to give less than what people deserve of them. Subhanallah. By the way, before I go on, just something that ties this to the previous surah. In the previous surah we read, Ya ayyuhal insan, ma gharraka bi rabbikal kareem. Allah asked a very powerful question. Human being, what is it that deluded you? What took you away from your noble Lord, from your gracious Lord? Now we learn in this surah, what took him away? His stiff heart. This is the worst thing that can take you away from your noble Lord. So Allah asked the rhetorical question in the previous surah, and we have this scary response in this surah. رَانَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. كَلَّا إِنَّهُمْ عَنْ رَبِّهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَمَحْجُوبُونَ. Subhanallah. It is these people that especially when it comes to their Lord, they are going to be barricaded, they're going to be blocked off, meaning they won't be able to see their Lord on that day. On that day, especially their Lord, they will not be able to see. There will be a hijab. You know the word hijab? A barrier. That which comes in between you and whatever you want to see, so that you can no longer see it. It's no longer in your sight. That's what hijab is, literally what hijab means. So here, when Allah Azza wa Jalla says, on that day, they will be permanently barricaded, blocked off from the view of their Lord. The wording is interesting in that there's ikhtisas. عَنْ رَبِّهِمْ is first. It is their Lord that they won't be able to see. It is their Lord that they'll be barricaded away from. And what that implies is there's something else that they will be looking at. And not only looking at, they can't stop looking at it. You remember in the previous surah, وَمَا هُمْ عَنْهَا بِغَائِبِينَ? They will not be able to steal even a glimpse away from that hellfire that is staring at them. They can't hide behind a beam and take a breath and say, okay, back to the punishment. No, not even a blink. They're stuck. Their eyes are stuck on that punishment. And here, they'll be staring at that, but what won't they even get a glimpse of? Their Lord. It's a contrast from what we found in the previous surah. وَمَا هُمْ عَنْهَا بِغَائِبِينَ. Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah said something very important in this ayah. وَفِي هَذِهِ الْآيَةِ دَلِيلٌ على أن المؤمنين يرونه عز وجل. وقال مالك لما حجب أعداؤه لم يروه تجلى لأوليائه. Subhanallah. حتى رأوه. Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah comments, this ayah is a proof that the believers will in fact see their Lord. This ayah is a proof that the believers will in fact see their Lord. And then Malik rahimahullah, he commented, when Allah's enemies are barricaded away, when they're blocked off from seeing Him, then He will show His glory, His full glory to the believers until they get to see Him. Subhanallah. So this ayah at the same time is a punishment on the kuffar and is a gift to the believers. ثُمَّ إِنَّهُمْ لَصَالُو الْجَحِيمِ. Thereafter, and you see all these horrible punishments, the worst of the punishments being described after the one crime. Allah mentioned different crimes, but when did the discourse on the punishments begin? The worst of these punishments was the sealing off of the heart. Everything is a result of that. But what sealed the heart? What caused that curse to fall upon them? They poked fun at what? The ayat of Allah. They poked fun at the ayat. They made ridicule of the ayat. They called them asatirul awwaleen. They had this arrogant attitude towards the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that resulted in this one after the other, after the other. First the heart gets rusty. Then they don't even get to see their Lord. Then on top of this, ثُمَّ إِنَّهُمْ لَصَالُ الْجَحِيمِ. Then they will be jumping into, casting themselves into the blazing flame. We talked about the original meanings of al-Jahim before. يَصْلَوْنَهَا يَوْمَ الدِّينِ in the previous surah. Here, لَصَالُ الْجَحِيمِ. يَصْلَوْنَهَا أي فِي الْجَحِيمِ يَوْمَ الدِّينِ. They will be throwing themselves there again. But here the wording is stronger because صَالُ is ism fa'il. It's an ism. In the previous surah we had yaslawna, which was a verb. And the verb is weaker than the noun. And since this context is stronger, the stronger word is used. لَصَالُ الْجَحِيمِ. This idafa is given to it, instead of having a fi'il and a maf'ul bihi. But then just the wording of these ayat is so powerful, subhanAllah. ثُمَّ يُقَالُ. Then it will be said. Allah doesn't say, then Allah will say to them. He says, then it will be said. Now what's the difference between He said and it will be said? When I say it will be said, I didn't mention who's talking. This is called in Arabic, al-fi'l alladhi lam yusamma fa'iluhu, right? Al-mabni ala al-majhul, the passive in English, the passive. Like when I say he was killed, I don't know who killed him, right? Why is that? Why did Allah say, it will be said to them? Allah did not say, Allah will say to them. Because in the previous ayat, has Allah not barricaded Himself from them? He's barricaded Himself, and now in this ayah, Allah is barricading His voice from them. He's not even talking to them directly. يُقَالُ, it will be said to them. Subhanallah. يُقَالُ هَذَا الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ. This is what you used to lie against. This is the very thing, هَذَا الَّذِي. This is the very thing that you had been lying against all along. This is what they're going to be told as they are jumping into the fire. This is what you were poking fun at, remember? This is what you found funny. This is when somebody reminded you of, you said, I don't need to hear this mythology. You remember that? This is what that is. They're being told over and over again, subhanAllah. ثُمَّ يُقَالْ هَذَا الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ. You know, in the previous surah, there was still hope. This scene is not of dunya. This scene is of what? Akhirah. In the previous surah, there was a scene of dunya. كَلَّا بَلْ تُكَذِّبُونَ بِالدِّينِ. No, you're lying against the deen right now in dunya. Change your ways. You've been doing this all along. No, there's guardian angels over here that are writing, not the guardian angels of the Christians. These guardians are guarding the things you do. They're archiving them. حَافِظِينَ كِرَامًا كَاتِبِينَ. Change your ways. But if you refuse to change your ways, if you're like these fujjar, the worst kinds of criminals, then the only thing left for you is the news. You can poke fun at it now. You're going to be thrown and you're going to be told, remember we said don't do this? Remember the thing you were told not to lie against? هَذَا الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ. Then Allah Azza wa Jal switches and He changes the scene and He takes us to the scene of the believers. And this, subhanAllah, is a contrast from the previous surah. In the previous surah we read, إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ لَفِي نَعِيمٍ. Certainly the righteous are going to be surrounded or immersed in bliss, in ni'mah, in constant blessing. What that implies, according to the imagery of Az-Zamakhshari, for example, even is, wherever they look, they'll see something that makes them happy. You know, you go to a new town or something, you're looking around, and you see this monument, you say, oh, look at that. Right? That's one thing that caught your attention. Not everything, one thing. But fi na'im. They're in it, and everything around them is something awesome. They look at that, somebody else is looking at that and says, look at that. You know, the one next to you in Jannah says, hey, look at that. And you say, no, you look at that. And then you switch scenes, you're staring at the other thing. You're surrounded by amazing things. La fi na'im. So here we find more detail about the righteous. In the previous surah, we found more detail about the criminals. So there we found, you know, وَإِنَّ الْفُجَّارَ لَفِي جَحِيمٍ يَصْلَوْنَهَا يَوْمَ الدِّينِ وَمَا هُمْ عَنْهَا بِغَائِبِينَ. We found 2 ayat detailing what we get about the fujjar, the worst criminals. Here we find 6 ayat, 3 times the number of ayat, just dedicated to the people of Jannah, just dedicated to what's going to happen with them. But it begins with their record. The record of the criminals was where? You remember? That roster, that register in that prison, fi sijjin. But now look what's going to happen to the record of the believers. Kalla, not at all. And this not at all is again in response to those who poke ridicule. They make fun of the believers because they talk about, these amazing things that are going to happen, these fantasies that they live with, that they're going to be punished and all of this is going to happen. Not at all. Inna kitab al-abrar lafi illiyin. The book of the righteous, and abrar again, jam'u qilla, right? This is the minimal plural because the righteous will be few. May Allah make us from them. Their record will be, their book is going to be in the illiyin. And illiyin has been interpreted in a number of ways. I'm going to share a few things with you. First, it comes from ulu, which means height. And illiyin has an ina at the end, and also in the next ayah, una at the end, which is called jam' mudhakkar salim, which is used dhawil uqul, the creatures that have intellect. What this implies is this book will be in the company of the highest. This book, one of the implications of that is, this book is in the company of the highest. And we know the higher the angels are, the more noble, the more responsible they are. In regards to the Quran itself, we read about angels that are up there, right? بِأَيْدِي سَفَرَةٍ كِرَامٍ بَرَرَةٍ. We've read that already. But this is another set of angels that are high, and what are they protecting? They're not protecting Quran here. This is a different group. This is a different kind of angels. They are responsible to guard over the book of the righteous. The book that, according to the ulama, has two things. First of all, about the illiyin, let's see what As-Sabuni says, rahimahullah. وَهُوَ مَكَانٌ عَالٍ مُشَرَّفْ فِي أَعْلَى الْجَنَّةِ. This is a very high place. It is noble and honored and dignified in the highest part of Jannah. This is in the highest part of Jannah. That's the name of it. So that's one opinion, that it's from the highest place in Jannah. Others say it refers directly to the angels. Zamakhshari says it could refer to both at the same time, angels and high stations. It is also, some ulama also comment, in addition to those two things, the book itself is called Illiyin. The book itself is called Illiyin, that this is its ism jamid. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So now, let's get an idea of this high Jannah where this record is. We find this interesting commentary, we'll come to it when the ayah comes actually. The soul of the believer, according to a great number of mufassirun, the soul of the believer is taken up all these levels of these heavens until they reach underneath the arsh. And underneath the arsh in the illiyin they have this record. And this record states that these muqarrabin, these shuhada, for example, those who died in the path of Allah, their evil deeds, or their punishment, they're saved from it. It guarantees their punishment, they're safe. And it also guarantees their entrance into Jannah. And then they're brought back. So they see their record and they get a guarantee, we're headed in the right place. So they see the contract before they're brought back into their graves. We know the shuhada go straight into the paradise, but this is referring to al-muqarrabun. Those are really close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are shown this roster even before the Day of Judgment. So we'll look at how that applies in this surah. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا عِلِّيُّونَ. What will give you any clue? What can you look at around you that could possibly help you imagine? Idrak, or adra yudri, to look around for clues to figure something out. You have nothing at your disposal that can give you any clue what illiyun is, what this high place is, and how secure that record is, right?
And now Kitabun Marqum, he goes back to the book again and says that is a stitched record. It's not going anywhere. Kitabun Marqum, a record that is inscribed for them perfectly.